My name is Emma. For years, doctors have told me that what happened was the result of dehydration, isolation, and psychological trauma. The police called it a survival story. The media called it a miracle. But every single night, I wake up at exactly 3:17 a.m. convinced that if I look out my bedroom window, I'll see someone waiting for me. I wasn't planning on telling this story. Some memories are meant to stay buried. But lately, pieces have started coming back. Not all at once, just enough to make me realize that maybe forgetting was never my choice. It happened in West Texas. I was driving alone after visiting a friend in Midland. The highway stretched for miles without another car in sight, just empty land, dry grass, dust, and the kind of silence that almost feels alive. I remember stopping at a small gas station just before sunset. The place looked abandoned except for an old man behind the counter. He barely looked at me while ringing up my bottle of water and a cup of coffee. Then he asked, "Traveling alone?" I smiled and nodded. He looked out the window toward the highway before quietly saying, "Try not to stop anywhere after dark." I laughed. I honestly thought he was just another lonely old man trying to make conversation. If I had listened, maybe none of this would have happened. About an hour later, the sky turned almost black. A sandstorm rolled across the highway faster than I had ever seen. Visibility disappeared within seconds. I pulled off onto what looked like an old dirt road, hoping to wait until the storm passed. The road led to an abandoned ranch. At least, that's what it looked like. An old wooden house. A collapsed barn, a rusted windmill that groaned every time the wind pushed against it. I parked beside the house and shut off the engine. The storm slowly faded. Everything became quiet, too quiet. When I turned the key, nothing happened, not even a click. The battery had been perfectly fine all day. I tried again. Still nothing. My phone showed 1 bar of service, then none. I remember telling myself not to panic. Someone would eventually drive by. I'd wave them down. Simple. But as the sun disappeared below the horizon, I realized I hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly 2 hours. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, crunch, 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 not running, not sneaking, just walking across the dry dirt. I looked through every window. Nothing. The sound stopped. I waited 5 minutes, 10, then I finally stepped outside. The air felt strangely cold for a Texas evening. I walked around my SUV with my phone flashlight. Nobody, no animals, no people, nothing. I almost laughed at myself until I looked down. There were footprints surrounding my vehicle, dozens of them, fresh, as if someone had walked in circles around my SUV over and over again. But there was something wrong. Every set of footprints simply ended. None of them led away. None of them came from the road. They just started and stopped. I convinced myself there had to be a logical explanation. I locked the doors and spent the night inside the car. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up because someone knocked on my driver's side window. 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I opened my eyes immediately. Nobody was there. The knocking came again. This time, from the passenger side, I swung my flashlight toward the window. Nothing. Every instinct told me not to unlock the door, so I didn't. Eventually the knocking stopped. Morning couldn't come fast enough. At sunrise, I decided to leave the vehicle behind and walk toward the highway. It couldn't have been more than a few miles away, or so I thought. I walked for hours beneath the blazing sun. The landscape never changed. Every direction looked exactly the same. Around noon, I saw the old windmill again. I had somehow walked in a giant circle. I tried a different direction. Hours later, I found the ranch again. That's when fear turned into panic. I wasn't lost anymore. I was trapped. And I had no idea how. By the second day, I had almost no water left. The heat was unbearable. My lips cracked. My head pounded. I kept telling myself to stay calm, think logically, find the road, find help. But every path seemed to lead back to the same abandoned ranch, every single one. By the third day, I started hearing someone whisper my name. Softly, almost gently. Emma. The voice always sounded far away. Whenever I followed it, it disappeared. Whenever I ignored it, it came closer. I never saw who was calling me, not once. But I always felt like someone was walking just beyond where I could see. Watching. Waiting. I told myself it had to be dehydration, hallucinations. That's what anyone would think. That's what I wanted to believe, until I walked into the barn for the first time. The inside was completely empty, except for one old wooden chair. And resting on that chair was my blue scarf. The same scarf I had lost somewhere in the desert the day before. I knew it was mine. I knew exactly where I had dropped it. No one else should have been there. No one. That's when I realized something that terrified me more than being lost. I wasn't alone. I grabbed the scarf and ran. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just wanted to get as far away from that ranch as possible. The sun was beginning to set, and I knew I couldn't survive another night out there. Not after what I'd already heard. Not after finding that scarf. I kept running until my legs gave out. Then I noticed something strange. The wind had stopped, completely. No insects, no birds, no coyotes. Nothing. The desert had gone silent. I looked around. That's when I realized I couldn't even hear my own footsteps anymore. I was walking. I could feel the ground beneath my boots, but there was no sound. It felt like the entire world had been wrapped in a blanket. I don't know how long I stood there before I heard it. A woman's voice. Very calm, very gentle. Don't turn around. Every muscle in my body froze. I wanted to believe it was another hallucination, but it sounded too real, too close. Then she whispered again. They're waiting for you to look. I squeezed my eyes shut. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I don't know why, but I listened. I kept walking forward without turning around. The voice stayed behind me, always the same distance away, almost like it was protecting me. After several minutes, it quietly said, "Not much farther." Then, nothing. The silence returned. When I finally gathered enough courage to look behind me, there was no one there, only endless desert. That night, I climbed onto the roof of the abandoned house because I was too afraid to sleep inside the car. I barely slept. Every few hours, I woke up feeling like someone was standing below me. Watching. I never looked. I couldn't. Something deep inside me kept saying, "If you look, you'll remember." The next few days barely exist in my memory. I know I was alive. I know I kept walking. But the memories are broken into tiny pieces. A half-empty water bottle sitting on a rock. Fresh footprints that matched mine, except they were walking beside me. Shadows moving even when the sun wasn't. Sometimes I remember hearing voices. Not scary voices. Normal conversations. Like people talking in another room. I could never make out the words. Only the feeling that they were talking about me. By what I believe was the 8th day, I stopped trying to leave. I know how insane that sounds, but I wasn't scared anymore. I was tired. It felt comfortable, like the desert wanted me to stay. Like it was slowly convincing me that there had never been another life outside of it. I even remember thinking, maybe this is where I belong now. That thought still terrifies me because it didn't feel forced. It felt like my own. The last memory I have before being rescued is the clearest of them all. I was sitting beneath the windmill just before sunset. Someone sat beside me. I never looked at their face. I don't know why. It simply didn't seem important. We sat there together in complete silence. Then I felt a hand gently squeeze mine. It wasn't painful. It wasn't threatening. It almost felt comforting. A voice quietly said, "You can leave now." The next thing I remember was opening my eyes in a hospital. Bright white lights, machines beeping, my mother's face covered in tears, a detective standing beside the bed. He smiled when he realized I was awake. Then he asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Emma, where have you been?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, not because I didn't want to answer, because I genuinely didn't know. It felt like 10 days had been erased from my mind. Doctors said I had been severely dehydrated, malnourished, exhausted, but somehow, I had no broken bones, no serious injuries, no signs that anyone had attacked me. The search team told me something I still can't explain. I had been found less than 3 miles from the highway, less than 3 miles, hundreds of volunteers. Search dogs, helicopters, drones, they had searched that exact area multiple times, no trace of me, until the 10th day. One ranger even swore the place where they found me had been completely empty the afternoon before. The police eventually closed the case. Official cause: disorientation caused by extreme environmental stress. My psychiatrist believed my brain created false memories to protect me from trauma. Maybe she's right. Maybe every strange thing I remember was nothing more than a dying mind trying to survive. I wanted to believe that, I really did, until they returned my SUV. Everything inside looked exactly the way I remembered, except for one thing. On the back seat, there was a sealed bottle of water, ice cold, no dust, no damage, the kind sold at the gas station where I'd stopped that afternoon. I only bought one bottle. I drank it on the first day. The receipt confirmed it. The cashier confirmed it. There was never a second bottle. No one could explain where it came from. The police photographed it. Collected fingerprints. Found nothing. No prints, not even mine. Sometimes I convince myself that someone found me in the desert. Maybe a stranger left the water there. Maybe shock erased the memory. That's the explanation I repeat whenever someone asks. It's the only explanation that lets me sleep, most nights, but every morning, at exactly 3:17. I wake up for no reason, and every now and then, before I open my curtains, I have the unmistakable feeling that someone is standing outside my window, waiting patiently. Not to hurt me, not to scare me, just waiting. I've never looked, because somewhere deep inside me, I already know who it is, and I'm terrified that if our eyes ever meet, I'll remember all 10 days.